So a few weeks back, Riot has announced the release of their new champion, Ekko. And it should just be a few days before he's released. Now, if you haven't seen Ekko yet, basically the thing that makes him unique is that he has a time rewind mechanic. He's an AP mid lane assassin with an ability sort of to reverse time. Now, if you've seen any videos of Ekko, you've probably seen some videos like this, or videos like this. Now, the general consensus of people who watch, who've seen Ekko's gameplay, most of them will tell you, wow, Ekko is so OP, oh my god, I'm going to play him as soon as he comes to live, I'm going to main Ekko and I'm going to get so much freelo. But is Ekko actually that good? Is he actually OP? I'm going to show you the basics of Ekko, run down each of his ability, run down how to play with him, and then run down how to play against him. And then I'll sum up Ekko at the end of the video. So, this is my guide to Ekko, a boy considered OP. Alright, let's talk about Ekko's passive. Ekko's passive is really similar to Gnar's W. So every time that Gnar auto attacks, he applies a stack. Just like Ekko, every time Ekko auto attacks, he applies a stack of his passive instead of his W. And his damaging abilities apply it, and his autos apply it. So after 3 stacks are applied to a champion, Ekko steals a part of their movement speed. This movement speed starts at 40% and scales up to 80% with levels. It's a really cool ability for quick trades because a lot of people don't expect that much movement speed steal. It's actually more than Blade of the Ruined King. Now, one other thing to note is that it does deal a ton of damage. It has a 70% bonus AP ratio, which is a lot of damage for a passive. This ability is really good for sticking on people, it's really good for chasing, and it's really good for short trades. Let's talk about Ekko's Q. His Q is basically a boomerang with a small twist. And that twist is the first thing the boomerang hits. It creates a small energy field that slowly travels up in the direction that Ekko originally threw it. Now, this energy field slows everything inside. It affects minions, champions, and everything except for, obviously, your own champions. And it does apply 2 stacks of Ekko's passive, assuming that you hit the forward and the backward motion. You max this first because it is your most efficient form of wave clear. Now, something to remember about Ekko's Q is that the Q damage on the way backwards is a lot more than the Q damage on the way forward. Unlike other boomerangs where some of them are even or some deal more on the way forward, Ekko's deals way more on the way back. Now, the way you avoid the boomerang is you don't walk backwards. Because if you walk backwards, the energy field will just stick onto you, slow you, and you'll still get hit by the second portion. Now, the way that you avoid this ability is to move side to side like this Karma's doing. So even though she gets hit with the first part, which slows her, I missed the second part because she moved to the other side. One more thing to note about Ekko's Q that is pretty important is that even if Ekko dies, his boomerang still comes back to him. So always remember to avoid the boomerang even after Ekko's death. As you can see here, even though I go full ham and die like a moron, my boomerang still picks up a kill for me. Now, let's talk about Ekko's E. Ekko's E can be broken down into 2 separate abilities. The first part is basically a short-ranged tumble. Now, when I first saw this, I initially thought, oh, it's basically like Vayne's tumble, right? It's short-ranged, just a tumble motion. But the big difference is that Vayne's tumble can't go through a lot of terrain, while Ekko's can go through a lot of terrain. Now, as I'll show you here, the range on E is actually very, very short, yet he can still cross a lot of terrain with just a little bit of practice. Like most of these that I'm about to show you, I got on either the first or second try. So he can cross a lot of terrain, even though it feels like he can't. So here are some important parts that he can cross with his E. The second part of Ekko's E is basically an empowered dashing auto attack. So after Ekko tumbles, he gets a dashing auto attack that does a little bit extra AP damage. Now, this is a really great ability for closing the gap, and most people don't expect you to get there so quickly. This ability can be used on jungle camps to juke and get away from your opponent. So the reason that his E seems so OP to people, like you just watch videos like this where you just instantly one-shot squishies. The reasoning that his E does so much damage is because his E applies Lich, Bane, and Ludens Echo. So late game, I'm not exaggerating, you're doing about 1,000 damage per E on Ekko. So let's look at Ekko's basic attack combo. So you E forward, you dash towards them to close the gap, you throw out your Q, and then you auto one more time to apply the passive to steal their movement speed, so that the second part of your Q can actually land, and you'll deal, you'll usually kill a squishy if you land all of the abilities. In lane, still, you won't usually kill people in lane, but you'll still get a nice chunk off of them. One more thing that's really good about Ekko's E is that it's great for disengaging and then quickly re-engaging as well. One last thing to note about Ekko's E, if you try to dash to a minion that has just died, you won't actually get the dash off. Alright, I'm going to talk about Ekko's ultimate. I'm going to skip over his W because I want to save it for last. So his ultimate is the time rewind function that was advertised by Riot. So it's not technically a time rewind. Here's what it actually is. Ekko has a shadow that follows him around wherever he goes, assuming that his ultimate is off cooldown. Now, the position of the shadow represents where Ekko was 4 seconds ago. So wherever he was standing, the shadow will be 4 seconds ago. So if he stands in one spot for 4 seconds, the shadow will be on the same spot. Now, if you activate his ultimate, Ekko will become invulnerable and blink to his shadow. And as he blinks, he becomes invulnerable, and he creates a huge AoE magic damage explosion. It also heals Ekko for a portion of the HP that he lost over the last 4 seconds. Now, the first important thing to remember about his ultimate is that it has a 1.3 ability power ratio. That is the most ability power that a single ability scales off of, excluding Malzahar's ultimate, which is also 1.3. So when you watch videos like this, obviously your immediate reaction is, oh my god, Ekko's OP, 1.3 AoE ability power scaling? That's ridiculous. And that's exactly what I thought. But then I played Ekko, and I realized shit like this doesn't actually happen that much. It's very rare that you'll actually be able to get the items that you need for this ability to actually one-shot someone. Because usually you have to bait the guy into the shadow. Usually people won't stand still like this for 4 fucking seconds and wait for your shadow to catch up and allow you to blow them up. And so long as your enemy avoids your shadow, you won't actually be able to get the damage off. One other really important thing to note about Ekko's ultimate is that even though his ultimate allows him to go invulnerable, you can't use it if you're CC'd. So he is, just like every other assassin, countered by hard CC. One other thing that's really important about Ekko's ultimate is that this isn't a time rewind mechanic. Riot didn't implement a time rewind mechanic because that's not healthy for a multiplayer game. So what this actually is it's a blink heal mechanic. It's basically a LeBlanc distortion that heals her. Ekko does not revert his own HP. He heals his own HP. So things like Grievous Wounds and Ignite affect how much HP is restored. Something else that's really cool about Ekko's ultimate is that you can use it to get back to lane instantly. If you have home guards and you go back to lane, you'll go back with full HP with home guards on you. If you go back to base without home guards, you'll recover about half your HP and mana. Now, this does work the exact reverse, so if you TP somewhere and the fight isn't going well, you can just click R and you'll just be right back where you started. So the easiest way to avoid Ekko's ultimate is just remember that his shadow is where Ekko will be in 4 seconds. So if he engages on you, just stay backed up, because his shadow will catch up to where Ekko was 4 seconds ago, and you'll just get blown up. Just avoid his shadow and you'll be fine. His ulti is fantastic for juking, combined with your E mobility. It's really easy to get away from a lot of people. Now, even though your ulti does do a lot of damage, it's not advised to just go for the explosion sometimes. You don't have a form of escape anymore, so you pretty much just get fucked. And it's really, you have to use your E as well, because usually your ultimate can't just completely one-shot an AD carry. Usually you'll be a few hundred points off, so you do need your E to finish them off. Alright, let's talk about Ekko's last ability, which is his W. I saved this for last because it is my personal favorite, and I think this ability will either make or break Ekko. So the W passive effect is that Ekko deals bonus damage to champions under 30% HP for about 6% of their missing HP. Basically, he deals more damage to low health champions, just like other assassins. Now, the active is a bit weird to explain, so bear with me. Basically, Ekko throws out a force field grenade that takes about 3 seconds to cast, and inside this force field, all enemies are slowed, and if Ekko himself enters the force field, it will detonate, stunning all enemies inside and giving Ekko a pretty big shield. The stun lasts for 2.25 seconds. To give you an idea of how long that is, it is longer than Irelia's E-stun at max rank. Now, any ability with a cast delay can be harder to hit, but an ability with a 3-second cast delay, this ability can sometimes feel impossible to hit. When aiming this ability, you're pretty much just aiming for prediction. Now, this ability is extremely hard to hit, but if you do land it on a squishy target, you're basically almost guaranteeing yourself a kill. Most of the time, you will just be using it for the shield portion, which isn't too bad either. This ability is actually pretty easy to avoid and flash out of, since right before the force field is about to land, you can actually see the circle that it's going to create. So it has a 3-second cast time and a 1-second window of activation. You're going to be trying really hard to activate this ability, and sometimes you're going to be putting yourself in some really bad positions. If you don't detonate the force field, you basically don't get a W ability, and you're pretty much just stuck with 3 abilities, as the W cooldown is extremely long. The best way to land Ekko's W is to shoot it while your opponents don't have vision of you. So that way you can approach as the grenade is in the air, and you can E forward to detonate it, almost guaranteeing you a stun. So yeah, that was my Ekko guide. I hope this convinces you that Ekko is not just going to be freelo when he comes to the live server. It does take quite a bit of practice before you actually get the basics down. And even after you get all of his mechanics sort of practiced and honed out, he's not really that much better than the current dominating AP assassin mid laners like LeBlanc. He is really fun to play though, a lot of skill involved, a lot of cool interactions, a lot of unique abilities, and I think he's really fun, and I can't wait to see him on live. So yeah, thanks guys.